I am a huge fan of, particularly if you're a beginner or early intermediate, choosing a repertoire that is based on relatively offbeat openings and gambits. I think that's a great idea. And what I always advise is that, people often ask me, what do you think of this opening? What do you think of that opening? What should I play? Try stuff out. Okay? You will not be able to find straight, maybe you will, but if you're choosing anything that's important to you, whether it's an opening repertoire or, or clothes, I guess, or a house or something, you don't usually choose the first thing that you see. You have to try stuff out, see how it works for you, feel the positions, and you will eventually find something that feels like home. But don't overstress trying to make the correct choice immediately. I see a lot of these questions. I'm stressed. I don't know whether I should try this opening. What is there to lose? You lose a couple of 3-minute games in a line, and at least you know whether it's good for you or not. So that would be my advice on being brave and trying out lines yourself and seeing whether they work for you. Results don't lie. Of course, having properly studied it, you shouldn't play something without studying it at all and then say, well, I don't like it, it's bad. You're going to hate everything if you don't know anything about it. Let's go. Black against Yax Patel. And let's go e5. And we have a King's Gambit. Oh, absolutely, Aniket. So, as you guys know, if you've been watching my stream for a very long time, there is a line here that is incredibly rare. I taught it to Tori. I taught it to John Davis a while ago. Does anybody know what move I am referring to? It's not e takes f4. It's not d5. Those are very reputable moves. It's not bishop c5. It's a move that looks completely insane. Completely insane. The move, potato for president, you just earned yourself. I'm going to gift you a sub. The move is c6. The move is c6. This is one of the rarest lines against the King's Gambit. So if you haven't seen this before, you're in for a treat. I'm not going to say anything about this move yet. Yeah, knight f3. Basically, c6 is a waiting move on steroids. That's what I will say about it. It's a waiting move on steroids. You're basically playing a souped-up Caro-Kann where white has greatly weakened his kingside with f4. And now what's the idea? The idea is that you have waited for the knight to come to f3, which seems to benefit white, right? Like, why are you waiting for white to develop their pieces? But after d5, the point of the move c6 becomes clear. E takes d5, he walks right into it. And now what is the key idea? What should black do? This knight, far from being a productive piece, is now vulnerable to the move e4. Then we are able to recover the pawn and get a monster pawn center with his king being very, very weak. Knight to e5, and c takes d5. Black is in very good shape here. Bishop b5 check. Okay, so this is all normal. How should we cover the check? How should we cover the check? Yeah, knight d7. Of course, we shouldn't go knight c6. We should go here, and we hope that he castles. This is a very common oversight. A lot of people castle here. They ain't call me a prophet for nothing. All right, why is it bad? Loose pieces drop off. He's gone f4. He's weak in the diagonal. Could be in the b6, winning the bishop and winning the game. That was a good moment. And we take the bishop. Oh, we could have also en passanted first, but it doesn't matter. Not necessary. Keeping the center closed like this is also good. Okay, so we're up a piece. All that remains is for us to consolidate our advantage a little bit. Where should we bring our queen to? Making sure not to give this pawn up too easily. We should go queen. No, queen d3 check? Queen to a5. That is correct. Good job. Queen to a5. Bishop to d2. Okay. So what is he threatening? He's x-raying the queen, which means that he's threatening this move knight takes e4. He is not threatening knight takes d5 because the queen will be able to capture the knight. Thank you, Sky, gifting to Paitao for president. Okay, so there's a couple of ways to deal with this. I think the simplest is to play bishop to b4. Yeah, covering up the pin. preparing simply to remove this knight from the board. This is the simplest. A3, bishop takes c3. And now after bishop takes c3, we can very safely move the queen, for example, back to b6. Doesn't matter even where, because the pawn on d5 is no longer hanging. Black is up a full piece. Bishop to b4. Okay, so he's playing quite resiliently. I have to give my opponent some kudos. He's trying his best, but, well, this is not going to be pretty. This is not going to be enough. So let's go knight gf6. Let's complete our development. Then we're going to worry about dislodging the bishop. He goes c4. Okay, so we need to be careful. We certainly need to be careful here. Our goal is to castle. If we can castle short, all of the problems in our position have been properly solved. Unfortunately, we cannot castle due to the bishop on b4, preventing it from happening. Can we do something about it? Can we do something about it? Yeah, we absolutely can. We can use our pawn and play a5. Basically tell the bishop to politely or not so politely get out of there. What should we take with? Slightly tricky question, guys. Remember to keep your eyes on the prize. What's the prize? The prize is to castle. We want to be able to castle. We want to make sure the bishop has no squares along this diagonal. And for that to happen, you got to think a little bit outside the box. Listen to what I'm saying very carefully. We want to make sure that his bishop cannot stay on this diagonal because that prolongs the time that we cannot castle. Let's take with the knight. It covers the c5 square. That's the important part. If we had taken with the bishop, which of course is also winning, we allow his bishop to park itself on c5. Queen a4. Okay, so queen a4 is nice, but it's not going to help him. We have a very classy move here that wins on the spot because it forces a transition to an endgame. Remember that queens just are not very good at holding things together, at accomplishing these kinds of tasks. And so, as Lamau says, queen to c6 is the move I'm thinking about. If we take the bishop, we give up the rook. Don't do that. A lot of you guys would take on d4. I don't like that move either. I do not like queen takes d4. This is a very important moment. And after the game, I'm going to talk about why that is, because this is a good opportunity to learn about proper technique. Queen to c6, forcing the queen trade. Either he moves the queen back and gives up the bishop, or he must simply take the queen. And of course, in the endgame, I don't even really care about not being able to castle. He has this move, but it doesn't help. Okay, so we can consider taking on c4, but do we have a better way of trying to win this pawn? Who can find a nice move for black here? Bishop to a6, excellent. Pinning the pawn to the rook. Not giving him any breathing room at all and trying to get the rest of our pieces out as quickly as possible. Just because it's an endgame doesn't mean that you can dilly-dally around. c5, okay, so he gives this up. I mean, this is over. Yeah, so if you want to play really clinically, if you just want to play super clinically here and not allow any kind of counterplay, then we should try to prevent him from going b4 and then maybe b5. So the Russian school of chess move is just to play a4, so that if he plays b4, we have an en passant. Just to make sure that there's nothing that he can do. He'll probably go rook b1 and try to get b3, and that would be my guess. But it's not going to help, and that buys us a little bit of time. Right, I was about to say en passant. Yeah, totally. Okay. Why is a4 the Russian school of chess? Because, okay, so he goes rook b1. What I propose we do... Okay, so he still wants to go b3. Our goal should be to untangle our pieces such that the rook is able to enter the game. So, from that perspective, what we can do is we can just play f5. I like that move, curious. And the point is to bring the king around over to f7 and then to e6. In fact, we can take en passant in order to keep the a file open, and we're just in time to play king f7. He's going to go here, and then we're going to walk our king up to e6, protecting the knight, and then bring the rook into the game, and then infiltrate down the a file. That's going to be the plan. Essentially a way of kind of castling by hand, but we basically bring our king to the center, and the game is over. Now we're threatening to take on a3. Thank you, GM Shadow, for the 5 months. How should we continue in this position? What's the most clinical? What's the most clinical move here? We certainly shouldn't take on a3 because c6 is hanging. We should play rook h to c8, either forcing a rook trade, which is desirable for us, or forcing his rook back to b7, and then finally we start taking stuff. I know I'm being a little bit pedantic here. Everything is winning, but I just want you guys to experience what proper technique looks like on this level, just making sure that he has no chances. Okay, so here, if we want to accelerate the pace at which we give checkmate, we should first and foremost pay attention to his king. G3 creates empty space on the second rank, which we can essentially use to cut off his king. Rook A2 is, again, the most clinical move, stopping his king from going anywhere. Then we've got essentially two ways to win the game. We can push the e-pawn, that's number one. But my preferred method is just to activate this rook, then move this rook away, and basically try to checkmate him down the a file. Okay, so he goes back. What we can do here is we can double on the second rank. That's the very traditional plan. That's what we're going to start with. It really does not matter. You could also trade rooks. Okay, so here what I'm going to propose is... let's just go rook a2. We can totally ignore everything. Takes, takes. Thank you, Valentinian. Have a good night as well. Yeah, it's over. The game is over. E3, then we can go like this too. We can get the knight over to e4. I don't know why he's not resigning, to be honest. Yeah, so I think the simplest here, let's push e3 just for fun. And then let's go here. No, of course it was over 15 moves. I mean, it was over after queen b6 in some sense. Yeah, now we checkmate him with rook h1 in the next move. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, of course this guy blundered pretty quickly, so it is what it is. Oh, nice, Ref Casal. Thank you. That's right, Phineas. So the move c6, guys, is something you're only going to learn in Naroditsky's opening laboratory. It's a move that has been played, now just for reference, for context. The main move, e takes f4, has featured in 32,059 games. c6, by contrast, has only featured in 42. And the top-rated player to play it was Moi in a Title Tuesday game. I played this move to crush a GM a couple of months ago in Title Tuesday. So that I have pretty fond remembrances of that game. And it's tremendously rare. Why is it so unpopular? Well, it's certainly not the best move in the position. And be under absolutely no illusions. If you want to play for an advantage and you want to do it principally in the King's Gambit, then you should probably take the pawn. Taking the pawn, I think, objectively speaking, is the best move, and it is the move that gives black the best chances for an advantage. Now, of course, white plays knight f3, and now in this position, there's a gazillion different lines. Recently, I think knight e7 has been an interesting attempt by some grandmaster trying to get the knight to g6. This is just one of several lines that I think gives black a very comfortable game. Traditional main line, of course, is to play g5. Nothing is wrong with this either. It's just incredibly theoretical and sharp. So from the perspective of avoiding theory, getting an interesting position, c6 is quite good. So first of all, f takes e5 is clearly very bad on account of the typical queen h4 check, and then either g3, queen e4. You know the drill. Knight f3 is what the vast majority of people play in this position. 79 games for knight f3, and more games have been added via the Caro-Kann move order. So, and here, what you want to do is go d5. This is the whole idea, right? This is like a Falkbeer counter gambit with that knight already on f3. And now our opponent played e takes d5, which I believe is not correct. The grandmaster who I played this against went knight to c3. No, if played right, I think it's closer to equality than anything. And now you can simply play e takes f4. And after takes, takes, black's got the c6 square for the knight. So this is a nice position for black. So e d c d. And let me just show you a couple of moves here. So Jani played... the grandmaster I played this against is Florian Jani from Switzerland. He played bishop e5 check. Knight to c6. Castles... Now, of course, this does not blunder the bishop because the bishop is protected by the knight. Knight to f6, and already I'm better because he's not able to easily win the pawn back. Knight f6, d4, bishop d6, and I went on to win. This pawn is extra, and it's not easy to win back. So the thing is, Boltzmann asks, why is it a nice position if white is ahead in development? So that's a little bit of a simplistic way of looking at the position. At which point are you asking that question, like in this position, or the way that I showed it here? So yeah, so I assume you meant here. The thing is, development is only one of several factors in a position. The white's lead in development is what's called a dynamic advantage or a temporary advantage, by which I mean if black develops, if I develop my pieces, then I'm going to equalize the situation. But in terms of static weaknesses, in terms of stuff that's a little bit more permanent, white's the one who's done a lot of damage to his position. He's given up the f-pawn, which means that the king side is permanently weakened. He's currently down a pawn, and black's got a very nice central control. So the development advantage cannot be exploited here. Black does not have enough targets. Black's king is not sufficiently weak to allow white to exploit the development advantage. So it's a temporary advantage that's going to be equalized once black develops the pieces. No, you should hang on to the pawn if possible in these lines. Now, the best move is knight takes e5. The best move is to take on e5 with the knight. This is not something that a lot of people have done. And this leads to very interesting complications. One of them is after d takes e4, bishop c4 happens. And now black has the very nice move, knight to h6, defending the pawn. And so the point is, if white simply castles, this move essentially loses. Can anybody tell me why? What happens here? And there is a mupwa here, most popular wrong answer. There's a tempting move here, several tempting moves, but then there's the correct one. Yep, and you guys are falling into the tempting move. Queen d4 check is very tempting, but doesn't actually do anything, because the bishop on c4 is protected by the knight. Instead, what you should do is play the immediate f6. The knight simply has nowhere to go. Now, perhaps queen h5 check looks a little bit scary here, but if you calculate the specific line here, you will see that, in fact, white's initiative dissipates completely. After g6, knight takes g6, there is a key intermediate move without which white would have indeed had a lot of attacking chances in return for the piece. Last move that I'll ask you guys to find, and then we'll wrap up soon. What is this intermediate move that gets the queen away from its x-ray of the king? You still do not need to play queen d4. You can go without that move. You can play bishop g4. Bingo. Queen drops back. H takes g6, and the game is over. So all these subtleties you got to know if you are to play a line well. And the reason that I'm emphasizing openings more at this level is that we've hit 1900. As I indicated at the very beginning of my speedrun, I try to tailor most of my advice to the level that I'm currently at. And at this level, openings have become quite important. You got to know your stuff. You got to know concrete lines, and you got to have some weapons. You got to have some lines that perhaps are a little bit more rare, that you can roll out and win some quick games. That's part of improvement at this level. Thank you, Dai Onlamindaki, for the prime. Now, the way that he played is quite poor. Now we get a very, very nice position, but still, I mean, white is not that much worse here if white can play well. So bishop b5 is fine. And of course, castles is simply the decisive mistake here. According to my analysis, actually bishop d7 might be a little bit stronger. But anyways, according to my analysis, d3 is the only way to preserve a reasonable position here for white. Queen a5 check does not do anything due to knight c3. And if knight and so black should play knight gf6. And now white should play the move bishop b3 in order to cover the b6 square and pave the way for castling. And black can play a6. You get sort of a massive liquidation here. a6, bishop takes d7, check, knight d7, queen d7, takes, and we got an approximately equal position. So something like this would have been a little bit more reasonable. Castles, though, very common mistake. It's easy to forget that this kind of thing exists because you don't usually get this kind of tactic so early. The rest of the game was very obvious. Bishop b4. There was one other instance I wanted to talk about, which is in this position. Why did I not play queen takes d4 check? So the bottom line here is that our goal is not to win more pawns. We're already up a piece. I've talked about this many times. When you're up a piece, or you're up a significant amount of material, you need to prioritize properly. And oftentimes the priority is not to take more pawns, but to make sure that you have consolidated your advantage. Phineas with a 10. Damn, girl. Oh my goodness. My gosh. So many subs today. I really appreciate it, man. Thank you, Phineas, for the 10 gifted. You are the freaking man. We've got tons of viewers here. This is great to see. And lots of support. Moving back up to 5K. Lovely. Thank you. Appreciate all of your positive company as well. This does not have a name, as far as I know. So back to the point before I was rudely interrupted. If anybody, oh, there we go. I was going to say, if anyone wants to interrupt me with more gifted subs, that's the one interruption that I might be able to tolerate. Curious with a 5. Damn, girl. Or I can just sit back and watch people gift me subs. That's also great. Okay. Let me try for the 3rd time to make the point I want to make. All right? Just trying right now. Just warning everybody. I'm trying to make another point here for the 3rd time. When you are up a piece, you're trying to consolidate. And sometimes when you start grabbing more pawns, it makes it harder for you to consolidate because it might do something like open up files for your opponent's pieces, or you might find that a piece which was responsible for consolidating is now too busy grabbing pawns. And I think this is the case here. Now, clearly, black is still completely winning. From a computer's perspective, queen takes d4 is undoubtedly the best move. If you turn on the computer, you will see a queen takes d4 check is best by a country mile. So what the heck am I saying? What I'm saying is that for a human, queen takes d4 presents a lot of danger. Because if you, for example, just grab 2 pawns like this, watch what happens. Rook a to c1. You've already given up the c file. This gets a little bit scary. It turns out that if you calculate concretely, black is fine. Here, here, bishop d6, and fortunately you have the move b5, attacking the queen and winning the bishop. But realistically, something like this could backfire if the circumstances were a little bit different. So if you see an opportunity to trade queens and emerge with a full extra piece, and you are absolutely sure that you've calculated that correctly, that's usually a better practical option than starting to grab a bunch of pawns and risking something where, you know, where you've given your opponent too much counterplay. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the bottom line here. After king h1, the computer indicates an insane tactical move that wins this bishop. I can give you guys a chance to find it if you want. Black does have a crazy move here, which turns out to be winning the bishop. So you cannot move the knight, remember. You cannot move the knight. Good. The move is b5. Good job, Artie Beer. That's crazy. b5 is correct. And the thing is, if queen takes b5, then white is no longer pinning the rook, which means that you can now take the bishop. If white plays c takes b5, then white is no longer pinning the knight. That pawn is in the way of the pin. That means the knight can move. Where can it go? It goes to b6, dislodging the queen once more. The queen must move, and then you win a second piece. And once you take the bishop, you're able to castle now. So the whole chain reaction falls apart. But of course, seeing a move like b5 is very, very difficult. That's a Grandmaster level move. Maybe I'd find it in a classical game, but why bother yourself in the context of a blitz or rapid game, you know? So in any case, once we played queen c6, the rest of the game was extremely straightforward. Okay, any questions, folks, before we wrap up for the night? I think people are pretty clear. I can take just a couple of general questions if people have them. Should one play main lines or marginal lines? So this is what I addressed earlier in the stream. What if he takes with a queen? Yeah, so if he takes with a queen, as I indicated, b5. So after cb5, you cannot take because of a takes b4. I think you missed that this pawn guards b4. If the queen takes b5, then this queen was pinning the rook. Now it's unpinned. You can simply take the bishop, and the rook is untouchable. Can we bribe you for another game? Well, you can. So in all seriousness, as I always say, you know, I don't want people to feel like they're donating subs or donating bits just to get another game. I don't want the bribing thing is fun, but I like to think that people contribute because you like the overall content, not necessarily because of like one individual game that I'll play at the end. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Nobody should ever feel pressured to sub or to gift a sub. But if you are doing it, I'd ask that you do it because you enjoy the overall content, not necessarily because, you know, right now you want another game. Even though I obviously always try to consider it, and I try to reciprocate when possible. Thank you for the 100 or the 1,000. Not bribing, totally not bribing. Thank you, Jaren. I appreciate it. I know people want more, and I always love to do as much as I can. And I think people deserve the very best given the level of support. So, but at the same time, I got to apportion my energy. Thank you, IDCN, for the prime. What about the bishop on b4? Well, yeah, but that's the bishop that we're trying to win. Okay, just looking at some more questions. Is playing e5 more theory work than French or Caro-Kann? On balance, yes. On balance, if you want something less theoretical, Caro-Kann at like a beginner intermediate level is good. And the French is also good. Now, there is a lot of theory in both of those openings. But e5 is pretty crazy to learn. Like e5, you have so many different openings. Whereas these other lines, maybe even the Scandi sometimes, if you're a little bit more advanced, can definitely be a little bit more manageable theoretically. Thank you for the 1,000. The original black pepper, another one. That's crazy. Thank you, sir. Glad to hear that, Johan Appleseed. Thank you, Screws, gifting to one more game. This is hilarious. Do you have any tips for playing 1b3? So recently on Chessable, Indian Grandmaster Bhaskar Anadiban came out with a b3 course. That's all I know. You can totally take a look at it. I think it's going to be good. He does excellent analysis, and you know, you can consider flirting with that. Maybe do one puzzle and explain through it. That's something I'm going to do post speedrun. I'm definitely going to explore the concept of doing sort of explained puzzles, stuff like that. I want to make that fun and dynamic, so that's going to take a little bit of tweaking, but I will do my best. More content, always more content. That's the goal. That's the goal. What do I think about the ready? I mean, if you like it, again, you can try it out. If you're getting good results, then absolutely. Yeah, I would do a chess. Whoa, Screws with a 5. Oh my God, Screws gifting 5 subs. Oh gosh, I see what you're trying to do. I see. Thank you, thank you. Yeah, the dragon is definitely playable at the highest levels. The dragon is definitely playable at the highest level. There's no doubt about that. It's never been refuted. You should consider looking more at annotated games. Like, basically, if you want to learn from games, there's so many games collections nowadays that it wouldn't make sense to try to hunt down unannotated games. Thank you, Jan, for gifting to Pon Masur. So I would say that. Now, I would say if you are trying to learn from unannotated games, like games that are played in live tournaments like this, you know, let's say you want to analyze a game that was played in Romania in the Grand Prix. You know, there's multiple techniques for trying to make sense of it. You can look at the live commentary, which I suppose is a form of annotation. You can use the engine, and that's a whole separate thing. Analyzing with an engine and being able to learn from that analysis is a difficult task, and I might do like a specific lecture on that. As Exastia gifting 5. Oh, my lands. I like positional chess and have been playing d4, c4 for white. What would be a good positional? Well, against e4 or d4, that really depends. I mean, Caro-Kann against e4 is the classic positional opening, and Queen's Gambit decline or Slav against d4 is pretty good against d4. No, I use the physical board. I like using the physical board. Will the afternoon stream be the speedrun? I cannot promise that. I don't know. Again, I prefer it if people just sort of roll with it, and I try to do at least a little bit of speedrun every stream. But occasionally I get into a good blitz match or something like that, and you know, then the plans have to change. No, I didn't mean the Caro-Kann against e4. I meant the Caro-Kann against e4. Why isn't the Vienna more common? Because black equalizes quite easily in the Vienna with best play. But I think that the Vienna is one of the best openings at any level really below 2200. So I'm a huge proponent of the Vienna for a lot of different types of players. And that would be what I'd say. How do you train knight movements as a beginner? Well, you just kind of have to play. Like, I'm not sure if you could really do isolated work on particular piece moves. Maybe there are some resources out there. I'm not the best person to ask on like modern resources for beginners, simply because I don't train with too many beginners these days. And when I started playing chess, the landscape was completely different. I mean, the internet existed and stuff, but there weren't nearly as many resources for beginners as there are now on YouTube and on various chess sites. So you're going to have to do some digging by yourself. And I would say that don't hold back. If you like search YouTube, search Twitch, find a streamer that does instructional stuff. There's so much stuff out there. You just got to find whatever works for you. And YouTube is a tremendously amazing repository for chess content. There's so much good stuff out there. There's lectures, and some of them aren't very well known. Like all sorts of GMs have delivered lectures on various topics. That's all to be found on YouTube. Nobody's going to lead you by the hand on these things. You're going to have to find it yourself, but you can always try to find the instructor or the type of content that works for you. That's something that I would say is very important. I've tried to make the speedrun into a format that works for everybody, no matter your learning style. But in terms of other types of content, there's videos, there's books. Try everything and see how you're able to transfer your knowledge most directly. That's what I'd say. Thank you all. Thank you for hanging out, and thank you for all the support. I'll see you guys later. Have a great night, morning, wherever you are. Take care. Bye.